Armed war vets were approaching, whistling and chanting. I dropped the comb I was using to unbraid the minister and covered my mouth. The mental image of Doomy, beaten to a pulp, sprawled on the ground, flashed through my mind. The mob circled him. It was like watching a hunting party waiting to make a move. Doomy turned and looked at all of them. Then he put his hands behind his back, staring forward into space defiantly. I wanted him to beg for mercy. I wanted to plead with Minister M, but my voice abandoned me. There were pains in my abdomen I could not explain. Standing in the middle of this ring of death, Doomy was calm, looking like a lion amongst jackals. What are you waiting for? He said. One of them raised his knob carry. Doomy took a deep breath. That's enough. Mr. M walked into the circle and instructed the war vets to get in their vehicle. I wanted to rush forward and kiss him on the stubby chin. Minister M was shaking with rage beneath me as Mr. M put his hand around Doomy's shoulders in an affectionate fatherly gesture. The other girls in the salon looked at each other. Their faces relaxed with relief, while some remaining clients were still frozen in their seats. The war vets drove off, singing revolutionary songs, victors of the third Chimurenga. You're a very brave young man. We could have used you during the liberation struggle, said Mr. M, his hands still down around Doomy's shoulders. I did not hear Doomy's reply, but it must have been thank you. Mr. M had run away from school to join the war against colonial oppression. He distinguished himself on many occasions and was known to have been one of the fiercest commanders operating in the north of the country. When the war was over, he joined the newly formed Zimbabwe National Army and had served until 1987 when he left to form his own businesses. I realized that what I liked most about him was a sense of peace and of dignity that I reckoned was the product of him having seen too much suffering. It was, however, the first time I'd seen him overrule his wife. Usually he was content to hang about with a disinterested air. The two of them moved out of earshot, talking. I was grateful that nothing had happened to my Dumisani. We went to the cinema that night. It was strange because I now associated movie houses with church. The film we chose was Hitch, in hope of seeing Will Smith's fine, rippling body. Doomy said that he appreciated his versatility, how he had moved from rap and comedy to becoming an award-winning movie actor. I just wanted to see those cute ears. We had bought some popcorn and sipped on Coca-Cola. The last time I'd been to the cinema was with Philip. It had been a very different experience. He kept talking about how much money he was making, as though that was all life was about. Then I'd listened keenly, but now I looked back in disgust. Next time we'll have to come and see something that's PG rated so we can bring Chiwoniso with us, Doomy said casually, not knowing how much it meant to me that he thought about my daughter. The lights in the cinema dimmed and the movie started. Doomy's hand slid across the divider to hold mine. There was a man at the bottom of the room with a terrible cough. Every 2 minutes he coughed, sputtered and wheezed, so we couldn't hear. The parts of the film we did hear were hilarious. The dialogue between Will Smith and Eva Mendes more so. There was a collective awe when the movie ended. We remained in our seats until the last person had left. We left satisfied. I told him I was afraid that he could have been killed by the war vets, but he laughed the incident off as if it had been a very minor thing. I told him how close he had come to death, or at least being wounded, but my words didn't seem to register. Those men were cowards. It is through fear that they manipulate people. Did you know that story of the owl's horns? I never heard it. A long time ago, before the time of men, when animals and birds ruled the world, the birds saw that animals had the lion as their king and decided to choose one for themselves. An owl insisted that he alone had horns and he should be the ruler. They were so afraid of his terrible horns that in the end they never chose a king for themselves. And so it was that the owl ruled through fear until one day, when he was asleep, as usual during the day, a little sparrow checked those terrible horns and discovered that they were in fact overgrown ears. Not everyone is as brave as you are. That's because we've forgotten who we are. We are the sons of Dombo and the Rosvis. We are the children of the builders of the great Zimbabwe, the eternal city of stone. Why have the children of the great Nizlikazi become cowards? How can the sons of Munhum Tuapa tremble before any man? I've never seen this side of him before, the passion, the strength, the determination. We walked hand in hand through the city. We passed beneath broken streetlights, and I felt as if there were only two of us in the whole universe with a crescent moon above. Doomy put his arm around me and we walked along like lovers. On the way, we passed drunkards pissing in corners and prostitutes flashing for business. Do you mind walking home? It's a beautiful night, I said, not wanting it to end. The sight of Mrs. Kumalo behind the cash desk greeted us on Wednesday morning. She was still in her nightdress and had a frown on her face. We greeted her, but she did not reply, sipping a cup of tea silently and resting her chin on her knuckles. I know you want to talk about what happened yesterday, Dumi said finally. You have no idea the number of problems you've caused me. She was way out of order. This is not the way you deal with these people. It only makes things worse. Trina is your supplier and your friend. I could not stand aside while she was abused. The same goes for all of our clients. Listen, Mrs. Kumala banged her fist on the table. I don't care what you think or what your principles are. You do not do what you did yesterday. Never, ever do it again. Do I make myself clear? I said, do I make myself clear? Dumi nodded and I did the same as if I'd been involved. The chair scraped back as Mrs. Kumalo stood up. She walked warily to the door. I forgot to tell you one more thing. We're closing this shop for 2 weeks starting on Sunday. This will give us time to do the renovations we spoke of earlier. It will also give us time for things to cool down. We told Yolanda and Memory about the 2-week break, and they seemed relieved to hear it. Charlie Boy kept saying that Dumi was either brave or mad. I'm just mad, Dumi replied. I tried to phone Trina, but she did not answer. I left a voicemail on her phone saying we just needed to know if she was okay. There was certainly a chance she would never come back. I certainly wouldn't do so if what had happened to her had happened to me. She was our friend, but part of me wondered whether it was good for her or us if she returned. Yolanda suggested that Agnes could pick up the supplies from her place instead. The thought of changing a supplier would have been insupportable to Mrs. Kumalo. There was no one else in the city who did what Trina did with the same level of integrity. The kids selling Friesits came over, but we shooed him away. No one was in the mood. We worked as we usually did, but our spirits were low. I noticed how we all kept looking out the window, as if fearful that a truckload of war vets would arrive. At any time a client's car pulled up, my heart skipped a beat. The day dragged. Clients spoke about the usual stuff: work, family, economic problems, husband trouble, and the like, but none of us seemed interested. It was as though part of our vitality, our life force, had been sucked out by some invisible agent. The urban grooves on the radio did nothing to improve my disposition. Dumi mimed along with his mind elsewhere, I was sure of it. Then I saw a slight smile on his face, the private smile of someone in love.